Welcome to a brand spanking new episode of Who Do You Think You Are? An exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lastia Cahoot and I'm your host. I'm joined by my co-host on this show and in life, Glenn Sheridan. Every episode, we're joined by a special guest who inspires us to consider not only what we think, but how we think and how that thinking impacts our life experience. It's time to get this conscious conversation started as we ask today's guest, who do you think you are?
Good morning.
Hello. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Who Do You Think You Are? My name is Lastia, and I am here with Glenn, my co-host in life and on this show.
Hello, everyone.
And today we have a wonderful guest that I am so excited to call my friend, a fellow student, someone who is going to, just spark an amazing conversation, I know, because I can already feel it bubbling up to the surface. But before we get started, I would like to say something that we would like to introduce as a part of our show going forward, and that is that we gratefully acknowledge that we are coming to you from Saanishtin, which is land that we work and live and breathe and play on, and that we are so grateful to do so because this is the unceded land of the Wasanich people. So now that we can get into our show, I would like to say that today's guest is a certified family recovery coach, and she got into this after her two daughters were in long-term recovery from years of struggle with IV heroin use. Her work has been featured on The Doctors, Med Circle, and numerous podcasts and at Oro House Recovery Centers. She is also a certified ICF PCC life coach, certified Daring Way facilitator, which is a program built on author and researcher Brene Brown's work. She is a speaker, an online course developer, and an author on the issues of family, recovery, compassionate communication, and relationships. Her work fulfills a huge need in our world today, helping family members develop the skills they need to help their loved ones recover fully from addiction in a supportive, holistic, and lasting way. This amazing person also leads an online family group coaching program that is free and open to the public on the first and third Tuesday of the month at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Now, I also have personal experience with this amazing being because we were in class together last year for the amazing first round of the Advanced Consciousness Studies class with Dr. James Mellon through the Emerson Theological Institute out of California. She is also one of my favorite speakers and practitioners when she gets up on the Global Truth Center stage because I just resonate so fully with her energy. And man, does she ever bring style to the stage whenever she's on there. What else? Well, personally, last year, I think it was probably around November, there was a day where I kind of spiraled into a big funk for whatever reason. I don't even remember what it was now. And this guest that we have today was one of the three other amazing mystical mavens that had come together to do a podcast a couple of times. And I reached out to all of them when I was in this funk and had an amazing, beautiful, profound conversation and experience with each of them, including our guest today. And so I am so grateful for her energy. I am so grateful for her just knowingness and being so firmly grounded in knowing who and what she is and how incredibly powerful she is. I am so grateful for her spirit, for the work that she does in the world. And I am so grateful that she is with us today. So knowing that there is so much more to talk about and dig into, without further ado, Andrea Arlington, tell us, who do you think you are?
Wow. Well, you covered everything that the five senses could tell us. Thank you, Lastia. That was a beautiful introduction, and thank you for reminding me who I am. I think we all need that, right? So I think that I am, more non-physical than physical. I spend a considerable amount of time every day being in the quantum field through meditation, and I'm currently practicing something that Joe Dispenza is really talking about a lot in his interviews right now, and that is how to be conscious of that quantum field when your five physical senses are activated, right? Like when you're operating in your day. Because for me, you know, it's really easy to get caught up in the what's going on, you know, like what's going on with my loved one, what's going on with my partner, what's going on with my kids, what's going on with my grandchildren. All of these things can really be, you know, they can really kind of knock you off your center. And you know, it's really a struggle sometimes. I don't know about you, but I have, you know, daughters, and they have stuff going on, and they're in recovery, but they also have life issues going on that are always, you know, like all of us, right? Full of ups and downs. And it's easy to get knocked off as a parent, you know, or as a partner. And so the thing that I'm learning to remind myself to do, and I do more now than ever before, is stop and breathe. Because when you slowly breathe, you calm down your brain waves. And when you calm down your brain waves, you sort of regather your energy. We tend to shrink energetically when we're stressed, or I do. You feel it, you know? And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm feeling so insignificant and helpless and small, and I don't feel powerful. And so when I stop and I slow down and I breathe and I center myself, or I use some of the other tools that I have and I teach my clients, like emotional freedom technique, or it's also known as tapping. I mean, that's one of my favorite tools. You know, breath work, mindfulness practices. We're just running my hands into cool water and becoming fully present in this eternal now moment, right? Where I can expand, I can feel myself energetically expand. And then I can respond, you know, with my prefrontal cortex, because that's the executive decision making, creative thinking area of the brain. And if we're stressed out or we get knocked off our center, we're operating from the amygdala, which is, you know, the fight, flight, freeze mechanism of the brain. And so, yeah, the prefrontal cortex is kind of like the adult in the house, and that's something that we want to keep activated as much as possible. So I don't know if that answers who I am, but
it's a lot of great stuff to talk about, that's for sure. And I mean, the very first thing that sort of comes to mind, and actually, I want to ask you, are you in the class again this year?
I was going to, and then I decided that I'm going to actually focus on other things right now. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Because I was going to say, wow, that started this past Thursday. And so I'm like, okay, what's it like? But okay, you're not in there.
No. No.
Okay. But last year, what we did for most of the year, sort of like once we all walked in there with our firmly, you know, built foundations and our preconceived notions and our beliefs and everything, you know, like all of that kind of got blown to shreds and smithereens in the first 5 minutes. And then as we dug into, explored, as we just sort of, you know, like leaned into the mystery of the question and allowed ourselves to be curious and wonder and dip our toes into the quantum sea of infinite possibilities, and started to wrap our heads around, well, okay, wait a minute, if everything is really potentiality and nothing is actually real as we've come to believe that it's real, then how do we do what you were sort of talking about a few minutes ago, which is immerse ourselves and lean into that infinite potentiality of the quantum field while still seemingly being rooted in what we know as reality? And I'm using air quotation marks as reality, where we can, you know, like seemingly touch and feel and smell and taste, you know, and see things. That balance, that I don't even know if balance is the right word, but that relationship or that navigation, whatever it is, that's kind of for me where the challenge, you know, has been in the last year since being in that class. And it's a constant for me, just a reminder that no matter, you know, what is going on, no matter what I'm feeling, no matter what I'm immersed in, that I'm creating it, and it's always being recreated anew. and that at any time, you know, any decision that we make, that it can change the trajectory of whatever it is that we're doing, whatever it is that we're experiencing. And so there's so much power, but I think for some people it can also be absolutely terrifying to know that, you know, this isn't it, kind of thing, that there's more to what we are experiencing. And
Mm-hmm.
if that's something that you're just kind of learning or finding out or realizing that you have all of this, you know, power to do and be more,
Yes.
um it can, that can sound super super scary for some people. And instead of, you know, kind of leaning into the expanse,
Yeah.
that can end up shrinking people and just completely close them down, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can. Because our brains are created to protect us from scary situations, right? And so when people's stories about who they are get challenged, they sometimes can feel the amygdala get activated, right? The limbic brain gets activated, and they feel threatened, and so what I would invite somebody to do is question that. What is that that's causing me to feel like I want to run or numb or hide? Or, you know, in the work that I do, when people feel threatened, it's often because they want to experience a sense of love and belonging. And it's hard to feel love and belonging to this quantum field when it's non-physical, right?
Mhm.
But truly, that's the antidote to the loneliness that we feel in our daily lives. Is to become clear that um, we are these non-physical beings, and we're not limited to this physical vessel, our bodies, or our brains, or we don't have to depend on other people, individuals, to fill the sense of need for love and belonging. And that is a gift, actually, but it's something that is a process of unpacking, like
Mhm.
starting to feel. When you meditate, I started to feel this expansive space within me, and psychedelics helped a lot with that when I was younger. Just saying. Once I had my first psychedelic experience, I was 12 years old at the time. I was in a wooded area in Madison, Wisconsin, sort of on my way to middle school, actually, with a couple of buddies of mine. And that was like that's when I was clear that, for the first time in my life, that, oh my God, all of this is energy. I can see it. I could feel it. I was experiencing it. And it didn't really caused me to have the amount of awareness that I do today
Mhm.
of how non-physical we are. But it was an initiation for me.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
yeah, it was an initiation. And I remember thinking to myself, God, all these authorities in my life, especially my dad, um, that are trying to tell me who I have to be and how I have to show up, to make them feel safe, right? Like, oh, my daughter is X, Y, and Z, like all the labels, right? She's an A student, she's a this, she's a that, she's proficient, she's going to college, she's going to do all these things, so that he felt comfortable, right?
Yeah.
Um, all of a sudden, I started to have this question in my head, like, okay, I, first of all, never felt like I wanted to be who he wanted me to be. But
Mhm.
after that initiation, I was very clear that people who are in authoritative positions often are people who become authorities because they're so um, in need of feeling uh, safe, right? So they become an authority in something, and then they want everybody else to come on board, so that they feel supported energetically, and uh, they feel the sense of love and belonging. They create their tribe, their community, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, except that it often is disrespectful for the soul energy of the other parties. You know, like, be who I want you to be so that I feel safe, right?
Yeah.
So, but I started questioning, like, oh, um, you know, if they're not aware of the fact that, you know, the inside of the trees has energy and vibration happening in it, why would I want to follow them? Why would I want to follow their authority? Because they don't know these things, right? And I started to feel like I was more of an authority, which kind of woke the rebel in me, right? A lot, a
What a
lot.
rebel. Yeah.
I mean, I moved out of my house when I was 14, and yeah, I was a complete rebel. You know, that rebel energy was sometimes in, you know, a favorable thing in my life experience, but it also did cause me to get myself involved in things that were fun and scary at the same time and crazy. But yeah, so I don't know, I kind of went off track there, but the non-physical, okay, so
No, go ahead. It's all good. Whatever comes up, comes up.
yeah, so yeah, so throughout my teens and my early 20s, I did experiment with a lot of different kinds of psychedelics, you know, mushrooms, MDA, ecstasy, all of it. I had one of my best friends was a pharmacist, and he made all this shit.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. So I was, you know, I remember one summer I was living in Chicago, and I can't tell you, it was probably 6, 7 days a week I was on something.
Wow.
But it was quite, and that was no longer part of the journey of let me see who I am, and in an expansive way. It was kind of like I don't feel good inside of myself, and so I was numbing, and I was trying to feel a sense of community with other people who were
Yeah.
also not feeling real good about themselves. And so I was all into the, you know, who do you want me to be? I'll be a people pleaser kind of mode at that time in
Yeah.
my life. And also I am numbing. And I was still the rebel. So I was a self-righteous, you know, person also that would offload my rebel, angry energy on authoritative figures in my life. And that didn't change for me until my brother Ben died of an IV drug and alcohol related accident. And that's when I put, you know, I stopped using the narcotics, um, started, I mean, I still did some psychedelics like mushrooms and smoked some good ganj once in a while. Um, but it was more like, oh, you know, it's time to kind of wake the fuck up, right? Um, you know, what is life, and what is life not? And I started having experiences with his energy, um, right, you know, the morning of his death, and really did a lot of reading about the non-physical, read Robert Monroe's work, Journeys Out of the Body, amazing, amazing research and experiences that he shared on how to start intentionally having out-of-body experiences, which I was practicing on a regular basis, and had a lot of really interesting experiences out of the body at that time. And sometimes they were scary. And so after maybe a good 10, 12 months of intentionally having those experiences, I shut that down because it was overwhelming, and there was nobody I could talk about it with. You know, nobody in my life, like I didn't have my tribe yet where I could sit and have these kind of conversations. Where were you, Lesia?
Well, this is the quantum leap, right? From like,
Yeah,
you know, one reality to another, no time or anything. So here we are
Exactly.
now.
Here we are.
just as a benchmark, what age are we talking about there, where your brother passed away and then you started
I
doing
was
that?
21 and he was 17.
Okay, so both still very young. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's when I started studying the Course in Miracles, and then Marianne Williamson's work.
right.
And I read an amazing series of books called The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East by Baird T. Spalding. Oh my God, you guys, that's a 5-book series and it's so good.
That sounds so familiar to me.
Well, it certainly made its way around the world back then and maybe before then. I don't know how it kind of landed in my lap, but
Yeah.
wow, that was beautiful stuff. Like that's when I really started meditating every day, and I was reading Out on a Limb by Shirley MacLaine. Loved that
Yeah.
book. Loved her insights and wisdom. And yeah, and that was sort of like the deepest spiritual. I mean, the psychedelics, that first trip on LSD, that was a deep spiritual like initiation, but I didn't recognize it as that, you know. And then I was reading the spiritual masters books, right? But I didn't associate yet the experience of the non-physical with spiritual. I don't know why. Makes sense, right? But I didn't. And yeah, so um, I was, you know, I guess it's been in those moments of deep and profound sorrow and pain is when I have really taken the next deep dive into my spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to jump in with another question or a comment.
Yeah.
As you're saying this, it's making me realize that, the kind of negativity or the bad press that people get when they start going down the spiritual path in a new age kind of sense rather than a strict religious
You're right.
tradition following that. So the woo woo thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's it's really not. It's like a slight deviation, I think, from when people start taking, um, especially psychedelics, I guess, but like mind altering drugs or aids, because you can't really talk about it or explain it fully. Even
Right.
as you start finding your tribe, you can talk about it a little bit, but it's still your own personal experience, right?
That's true.
But it's still then overall they both get bad press. The one, the drug stuff is sort of the criminal aspect. It's morally bad in many societies. Um, but you could have the same description of people becoming, looking into, well, what is this about angels and what is this about out of body experiences. In some societies or some religious traditions, that's just going to be labeled as, well, that you're dabbling with Satan kind of stuff. Like, well, that's a
Mm-hmm.
bad path to go down. So it's an interesting kind of crossover that you were at, where you're kind of as you say, finding your tribe. You didn't, you, I remember being that age and thinking I knew everything on the one hand, and also secretly, oh my God, won't someone help me understand this stuff because I know nothing, right? It's just,
Right, right.
yeah. But yeah, it just sort of crossed my mind there. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's important to even having one friend to talk to, and I think I just discovered your Instagram page, and you have little slides kind of thing where when people are younger and they come across material like that, just little helpful visual reminders about who you are and why it's important to honor your own being. I think that's a good thing. I mean, it's not as good as talking to someone in person, but at least younger people now have that
Right.
other path to kind of help them,
Yeah.
through technology, I guess. But
Well, and thank you for bringing that up. Last year during COVID, I created a 15 module course that's an online course called the Life Reset course. And it's really like about having, so every week I'm available with my daughter who is now 29 years old, and she's bisexual. She's a recovered heroin addict. She's married with 2 children, but actively having a relationship with a woman at the same time, married to her husband who completely supports the whole thing. there's all of this great conversation going on with all these young people. Like we have 130 women involved in the course right now. Not all of them show up for the Wednesday night calls. In fact, it's really like 10 to 12 that show up consistently, and it's usually when they are going through something tough, you know. But the modules in the course are all helping them explore, you know, who are you, and based on whose belief systems are you that, and how do you open and expand to a greater awareness of who and what you are, and how can you create the life you want for yourself. And we have all that. We teach all the tools, like we have meditations and a whole module on life reset course and future journaling and all of the things that have helped us recover from our own reality, you know, and create the one we want, right? Yeah. So yeah, so it's so important for people to have a platform where they can come and talk, and I do a lot of private coaching with young women that have nothing to do with recovery from addiction, but really just like, how do I expand into self-love? How do I find a sense of love and belonging inside of myself, so that I don't continue on the path of people pleasing, numbing, feeling flawed, all of those things. Yeah.
Well,
I have so many pages of notes so far, and there's so much. I mean, a lot of the stuff that you've talked about, I'm just like, for myself, check, 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 you know, my experience, my experience, my experience. And I was just kind of thinking about, you know, my own experience with psychedelics when I was younger, and or any kind of drugs, and the idea of, you know, finding community or tribe or someone to connect with through that, you know, sort of engagement. And just, I mean, there are two times that sort of, you know, like are seared in my mind. One is after I had just moved to Toronto from Edmonton. Well, the first year I lived with my dad. And then the second year I moved into this like totally crooked house on a street called Via Italia in an Italian section of Toronto. Like it literally, it was almost looking like a haunted house from the outside, and walls weren't straight, ceilings were falling, whatever, but it was, you know, the price was right. And I moved in with basically three people I didn't really know. One person I had worked with for a few months at the record store that I worked with. He brought in a friend of his from Ottawa who he knew, but like went to high school with, but they weren't in the same year. So they kind of knew of each other, but didn't really know each other. And then I ended up bringing in the stepbrother of my best friend, who I knew of, you know, the stepbrother, but didn't know. And so I ended up in this like crazy wackadoodle shaped house with these three guys, which just became a total party house. And there were four big parties. We'd have like one huge party, you know, a season kind of thing, where we would actually, one of my roommates was a fabulous, amazing artist who actually ended up winning an Oscar for his work on the movie Avatar a few years ago. So just like an amazing artist. And so he would do these fabulous posters. And I still have one poster that I want to get framed. I found it after we moved here. And we would put these up at nightclubs and at speakeasies and just around town. Just people would come to our house. And so there was one time where I had just smoked some pot with some friends, and it did not work well for me. And the experience that I had, I thought everybody was having this experience. And that was sort of, you know, the lens that I projected onto, you know, everyone else. And after this trip kind of, you know, had its way with me sort of thing, I was sitting on the steps of our house outside as people were kind of spilling out at 6 a.m. or whatever, and discovered that what was my experience was not anybody else's experience. And then this other time was when I was in my room alone, in another place, after having done mushrooms, which was, in all honesty, like my favorite drug of choice back then. It was like, why aren't these like just set out in little snack bowls all over tables at people's houses? This is amazing. They taste like, this is not saying go and do drugs, whoever's listening
No,
to
no,
this.
no, no.
But you know, they tasted like sunflower seeds, and then the experience, you know, like the mind altering, you know, just having a completely different bodily experience, seeing walls move, things like that. And so this particular one, I was in my bedroom, and it had been after a few hours of partying and dancing and being on this mushroom trip. And I had, do you know Monk's um painting the scream, you know, the with the like, you know, that.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so I took that and I photocopied it. And what I did was I photocopied it. And as I photocopied it, I'd turn it at a right angle and then shrink it by 5% or something like that. And kept doing this over and over and over again. And so, and then I put it along one wall of my room. This
Oh
is what
God.
people in their teens do, right?
Right.
And so I put it, and the whole wall was just Monk's the Scream, going at different angles, getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Andrea, when I was looking at that wall, I mean, I can't
Ooh.
even remember, but like the waves and the moves and the faces and the screams and whatever. And I'm just looking at this going, what is happening?
Right.
Like, talk about trippy, you know. And eventually, you know, it wound down and whatever. But I'm like, there's no one else there's no one else here that I am sharing this with. This is like an
Right.
extraordinary experience. How is this happening? Why is this
Yeah.
happening? Because the walls, like, it liquefied, it came to life. It was just, you know, completely different.
Yeah.
But like you sort of said, for me, I didn't know back then. I didn't appreciate, you know, for me, it wasn't an initiation, like you said. It was just, it was a way to escape, you know, the day to day, to not feel what I was feeling, or to feel something other than, you know,
Right.
what I wasn't.
Right.
Because during the day, it was just, you know, even though on the outside, I was a totally functional and, you know, social kind of person, on the inside, it was just
Mm.
total darkness and
Yeah.
shame and numbness, and
Yeah.
I'm broken and I'm no good, and that kind of thing. And so, so it's, you know, it took a while, but eventually, when I was 25, I stopped everything. I
Yeah.
stopped drinking, I stopped all drugs, and there was one relapse with drinking a year later that I had, but after that, that was it. And it just, for me, what I get out of meditation, that feeling of expansion. And for me, I just feel like I'm being
Mm.
blown up like a balloon, and that my entire,
Beautiful.
every single cell and molecule, and even the
Oh,
interspaces in between, are just opening up, you know, and knowing that that infinitude, you know, of universe, that infinite expanse of universe that's out there, is
right.
also in here, and is who and what I am, just like
Yes.
coming to life. I mean,
Yes.
I
Yes.
feel like I get it, you know, from what I'm doing now, and I don't need to, you know, go down
Mm.
another road right now.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So that expanse and that feeling of divine intertwinglement, you know, just being interconnected with everyone and everything actively,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, living, breathing, pulsating, expanding, undulating, you know, all of
Right.
that stuff. That is just extraordinary. And it's taken years and just mindful, intentional, committed work to get there. And still, you know, there's no destination, like I'm here, I've done it. It's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing practice. It's an ongoing way of being, which
Yeah.
is also to say that, you know, as we go through the work that we're doing on ourselves, that we don't, it's not a straight line, right? Like that, when I called you guys last November, it's not like it hit me completely by surprise, because there is like a cycle or a spiral, or 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Um, and I know enough now to know that when I do just start to plummet, that there's something that needs to come up. There is something that needs to be experienced, something that needs to be released, and that it is a period of, you know, extreme profound growth. But if
Right.
you still feel horrifying and
Yeah.
awful and painful and dark. And so to have people to lean
Yes.
on and turn to, and for
Yes.
me, it was really scary to turn to you and to Lori because I didn't know you guys that well yet.
Right. Right.
Dale, I knew, but I just thought, well, we've done this podcast a couple of times. We share something, and there was just something in me that said, just do it. And then the conversation
Mm.
I had with each of you was just, it was very different. Each of you did a crackerjack, amazing, super awesome, kick-ass spiritual mind treatment at the end, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But I got something different from each of you, which was just wonderful and so life affirming, and just such a great reminder that no matter what we're going through or feeling or experiencing or thinking or even believe, that there is that in us that is infinitely more powerful and creative and resilient than any of it.
Yeah. And I just, as I was listening to you, I also want to remind your listening audience that being that we are primarily non-physical beings, I don't know what anyone else's belief system is, but I honestly know for sure that we have non-physical beings that are here with us, supporting us, that are our soul tribe, that are our family. They are in the non-physical right here and right now. So even though it's nice to have people in our tribe physically that are supporting us, I also just went through like a couple of solid weeks of like, what the fuck is happening? Like in my mind and heart and soul, I don't know who I am right now, and I am scared to death of what I don't know right now. Like I was having a really hard time pulling myself out of it. And normally I have all the tools, you know.
Yeah.
And so, and I was using the tools, but but what I started to do, because I was listening to a lot of great YouTube stuff by, I love listening to Abraham Hicks to remind me that, you know, we do all have access to consciousness that is non-physical, that has access to hold the container for us energetically, to guide us and direct us, but we have to call on it. We have to ask for that support. It's not going to just show up for us if we're not consciously intending to connect with that energy, that consciousness. And some people say, you know, oh, my spirit guides, and we can give them names, or they can give us names, or they can, like, for instance, Abraham is really a collective consciousness. It's not one entity, right? It's a collective consciousness, or at least that's the way that it explains itself. And so, and I've never really done that. I've never really sought guidance from archangels and from spirit guides and from the ascended masters. I've heard other people do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, whenever I've gone to mediums, or you know, psychics, or other people who allegedly have access to that, you know, that consciousness, that expanded knowing beyond the physical, in a way that they can help support what's going on for us physically. I was like, I never tried that myself. But in the last couple of weeks, I've made that a part of my daily practice. And I got to tell you something, like I'm getting led to things, you know, like it's like you were sharing, like how we were able to do treatment, you know, that was like that rocked your world at the end of those conversations. That treatment is just like moving energy, right? But so when we ask for support from the non-physical beings that are, or being, or consciousness that is, whatever we want to call it, the universe, God, or individualized consciousness that is part of our soul tribe, you know, just like your individualized consciousness and Glenn is and I am, all of that exists in the non-physical, and it's here for us, but it won't come through. It just, that's part, I think that's part of the deal, right? Like you have to like welcome it, invite it. And so I journal now, I'm writing, and I'm allowing whatever comes through to come through, but I'm also having insights, and I'm being guided to do things and hear things Like, I'm listening to podcasts I've never listened to before, but I know for sure I was guided to hear that one.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to have more fun, and I'm feeling more playful, and I'm feeling so much more ease, and like just trust that everything is unfolding beautifully and perfectly. And it's all because, and I think that I had to hit that dark place where nothing on the physical plane was, including all my energy work, and I do chakra balancing, and I'm a Reiki master, and I'm all of these things, right? And it's all good stuff. It's great stuff. But and in meditation, but it was, I think I needed to like see, none of that was doing it for me, right? So I needed that to help me go to the next level, which has been for me in the last couple of weeks, like I said, inviting the angels and the ascended masters and my spirit guides.
As you were talking about that, and I think that is so amazing to like call on that guidance, to ask for it, to demand it, to expect it, that it's just sort of like wishing and hoping and being aware that it's there kind of thing, like that's not enough, that this is part of that, like you said, this is part of the deal. This is part of the active participation in the expansion, in becoming greater than what you are in this moment. But it reminded me of, and I'm pretty sure that it's from Think and Grow Rich. I just don't know if it was Napoleon Hill or if it was Andrew Carnegie, who used to call on a round table of like the greatest minds every night. And I remember reading that, and I used to do it too. Like I picked my people, and I would, have this round table with them and talk to them and ask them questions. And I totally forgot about that. And I just thought it was such a cool practice to have conversations, whether it's with people, and he was talking about actual people, who are alive now or who have passed on, but to be able to have these conversations to get their support and their wisdom and their insights. And yes, because it's all energy. I mean, we can tap into that anytime, because really, like, we're all swimming in it. We're all made up of it. We're all this incredible energetic flow in motion and expansion and evolution all the time. So to call on that, for me, it kind of reminds me of the like that I had last year in class, when I realized, that this experience that I'm having is not the only experience that I'm having. This is just one trajectory. It's the one that I'm aware of. And so if there is something that I would rather experience, that, something in the future, I can draw on that. I can draw on that and feel that and experience it right now, immediately changing the trajectory of, what I'm aware of. And, it still sounds kind of magical and bizarro and parallel university and whatever, but well, why not try it? Like, why not? So thank you for that, call on the guidance reminder. I think that is such an amazing tip, for I'm going to take it for myself for sure, but for all of us to sort of, have the opportunity, another tool, if you will, to just change, to shift, to move energy, however you want to sort of call it.
Well, and thank you. I had this incredible experience working with somebody who does energy healing from the other side, energetic healing from the other side. I reached out to her, and I actually, you know who she is. She was in our advanced consciousness studies, Ursula.
Oh yes. Oh, I did a session with her too. Yep.
How cool was that? So cool, right? So, but what's really cool was that, even though people are still on the physical plane, there is an energetic, non-physical part of them that we can call upon, so like I had limiting beliefs about who I am that were based on childhood experiences with my father, right? And I'm like, everybody's doing the best they can. I don't blame my dad for anything. I mean, like the societal, patriarchal, puritanical stuff that he was raised in caused him to have belief systems and behaviors and thoughts and emotions and ways that, impacted me as a little girl unconsciously from both our parts, right? But I was like, why do I have this struggle going on inside of me? And so we unpacked it, Ursula and I did, and we actually pulled forth his non-physical energy to get clarity on what was this really meant to be? What were your intentions? Why, and what is it you want to tell me now?
Yeah.
And it was a completely different message than what the little girl who didn't have any filters that said, hey, that doesn't belong to me.
Yeah.
That's yours, right? So that was really cool too. So, but the reason I bring that up is because, just like my dad, who's still alive, has the non-physical consciousness that he's not at all aware of yet. But we do too. Like, we can call on the non-physical intelligence and awareness that wants to be connected to us. Like, here's one of my favorite things. Like, I like to go up to the mirror and look into the pupils of my eyes. Because I used to do it when I was tripping on different things, but what is it that's staring back at me? Like, what is it that's looking at me through my own pupils? And people have told me in the self-help movement, oh yeah, you got to go and look into your eyes every day and say how much you love yourself. But no, don't look at your eyes. Softly gaze into the depths of your own soul through your pupils, and then develop a relationship with that non-physical energy that's looking right back at you, and ask to have a relationship with it and consciously develop a connection with it. I mean, what greater gift can we bring to the world than to have access to that non-physical part of ourselves consciously, And now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, oh, there's another level that I want to engage with, yeah. So anyway, people ask me, well, who am I? Like, how do I have this clarity of the non-physical part of me? How do I have the experience of it? And the truth is that's one of the greatest things you can do, is to really engage with yourself in the mirror, looking into those pupils, and there is consciousness looking right back at you, and you got to ask, well, what is that consciousness? Well, that's who you are. That's what you are. That's the quantum field of intelligence and love and wisdom, and it's actually intimidating, the experience, I think, for a lot of people, and it was for me as well, because it disturbs the story that we have about who we are. Oh no, I'm Andrea, I'm 57 years old, I am a minister, I'm a mom, I'm a grandma, I'm a coach, I'm a healer, I'm all of these things. But oh my God, I am so much more than that. And you can just cry. Like, I feel like I'm gonna cry when I talk about it. I feel this sense of awe. And then when you have that relationship with your own self, you start to look at other people in a way. Like, I was with my granddaughter the other day, and I was like looking into her eyes, and I was like, oh my God, like, I am looking at God right now. I am seeing the universe in my granddaughter, and it was just beautiful. We can do that with our pets, with kids, with ourselves.
With kids, you can look into their eyes, and they'll look into your eyes, right? But at some point, we start to look at noses and foreheads and, off to the side and whatever. I mean, but I do. I remember you saying that a few times during class last year, and even during our Mystical Mavens podcast. That was one of the things that you offered. And it's a beautiful, profound, but it can be very discombobulating practice when you first start, because it's very intimate. It's very
intimate.
Like, I don't even quite have the words to describe the what happens when I do that. And then, I mean, Glenn and I have we've looked into each other's eyes.
Yes.
which just like that connection. I mean, like everything just disappears, and then it's just, you're just
Mm-hmm.
completely bare and vulnerable, and
Yeah.
again, I don't even have, the words to describe the profundity of, that kind of experience. And
It's,
that is,
yeah,
you know,
so vulnerable.
entanglement again. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, so thank you for that. I was going to ask you about that if you didn't bring it up. So I'm really glad that you brought up the gazing into your pupils. Honey Bunch, you're muted and you're silent. And I think it's time for you to jump
Uh,
in. I'm sure you have something to say, to ask.
Um, I remember reading somewhere. I'm going to butcher it because I have no knowledge of the language, but in Hebrew, I think I is I ayin, and I think it also refers to um, like a fountain.
oh,
So the word, the eye, like there's a spirituality kind of built into certain words, right? Especially with
yes.
Hebrew and the Proto-European languages. It's like, so with that one, I think there's more going on than just, oh, it's his eye, that's her eye. It's there's an acknowledgement of something going out of when
Hmm.
you see an eye, when you see your own eye, which is only a recent development to being seeing a reflection of your own eye.
Right.
Uh, but to see in another, at least you're looking at it, think, oh, yeah, that's who that person is coming out of them,
Hmm.
and you get the connection through their eyes, right? But one thing I do want to share with you, and I don't know, since like I've spent a lot of time listening to the Abraham Hicks stuff, but my anchor in spirituality was the Seth material, which is quite similar to the Abraham Hicks stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So Jane Roberts,
Yeah.
and that material was distilled into a series of 4 books by a lady called Linda Madden Dahl, and this is the first book. It's Living a Safe Universe, Volume One. So one thing she does is, and it's so in terms of like daily practices and that kind of thing. She breaks down the information and then like represents it in a way that you know you're reminding yourself all the time that this is just, this is what you are putting out there, right? So I'm going to read. It's actually, I put it on my phone so I could read it more quickly, but this is one of the exercises she talks about when you were
Oh, I
mentioning
love
Joe
that.
Dispenza earlier on. It's a similar thing. It's like, how do you remind yourself that this is a, you know this is your projection and your perception in the quantum field kind of thing. But and the Seth material, he calls it camouflage reality or camouflage constructions. That's what we're seeing, is like, and experiencing is camouflage. So this is what she says. She says, one of the first tasks I undertook to help me get a sense of the moment point has to do with camouflage constructions. We know our physical reality is created through the illusion of camouflage and is recreated millions of times a second. We also know it never leaves the spacious present. And we know the only creations we experience in our individual physical reality are those formed by our brain through our 5 senses: sight, touch, taste, hearing, smell. So here's what I do: I sit in my living room with my eyes open, absorbing the realization that the room and everything in it is being recreated millions of times a second. It is there and then not there and then back again. And I think about the fact that nothing is beyond its walls except the spacious present. There is no camouflage beyond the walls because I cannot see it. Therefore, it is not manifest into camouflage, not the outside environment, other than what shows through the windows, not the other rooms in my home. It's a really spacey, but like when you leave a room, it's not there anymore. Right? That's a quantum thing as well. So I visualize seeing nothing beyond the walls,
Right.
knowing what I see of the room is the only camouflage currently present in my physical reality. And when a car drives by that I cannot see, I realize there is no physical car, only the sound of one. Then I close my eyes and know all the camouflage quite literally disappears. Only what I touch is now manifest, such as the couch I sit on. But the couch is not manifest as a whole physical object. Simply the place of my touch is manifest because I cannot see or feel the rest of it. So she does that a little bit more, but she says a little bit more. But basically, it's a really cool exercise to remind yourself that it's like and it's funny because as I'm doing this, you're physically breaking up on my screen, like your image is pixelating. So that makes it even more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow, you're turning
Yes, I
into a
see
painting.
that. That's so cool.
I'm like painting this. Yeah. So it's a
Yeah.
really cool reminder of that kind of like just breathe, close your eyes, and you know remind yourself that when you open your eyes, or even when you don't, it's what are you perceiving? What are you choosing to perceive? You know, it's a beautiful kind of and cool thing, I think. But I highly recommend the books if you're at all into Seth, because it's actually an easier way to understand the Seth stuff.
So
Yeah. So, is she there again?
I wrote it down. So
Oh, okay.
thank you for that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Honey Bunch, that was great. Thank you so much for sharing
Can
that.
you hear me or no?
We can hear you intermittently, Andrea. It okay. Yeah, I mean, I can see you.
Yeah.
You're choppy though. Your internet connection seems to have, I don't know, gotten choppy.
Little too
It's
much
not.
camouflage, I think.
It's
But the every time when
seriously.
she pixelates and or when you pixelate and it's just like this like bizarre, almost abstract,
Yeah.
watercolor painting starting to happen. That's
But to be
great.
fair, Lass and Andrea, you both were talking about trippy experiences and altering reality. I'm just barely hanging on here. You two changing physical reality through your memories, and then it comes back into this moment.
Right.
Doing the best I
Okay.
can, folks.
Hmm.
Anyway, do you want to reset your thing, or what do you want to do, Lass?
I
What's
Yeah,
love
happening?
Andrea,
it.
do you want to go out and come back in and see if
It,
that makes it better?
Yes, I do.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right.
well,
We'll
let's
wait for
pause
you.
it.
Yeah. Let
We'll
me
Yeah.
do
we'll, we'll
that.
be here.
Okay. Be right.
Oh, yeah, no, Honey Bunch, that was amazing. And I have to say that even though I don't sort of go step by step like that, like you just said in the exercise. That's very much what I feel when I'm meditating, or
Yeah.
even when I'm listening to a Kenneth Swash, powerful affirmations meditation.
Yeah.
That awareness just, it extends as the awareness extends, everything else just dissolves and melts away and
Yeah.
just kind of move into nothingness, and that's when I get that feeling of expansion from the inside out, just feeling that the infinitude. But I love how specific she was about like the sound of the car, not the car, like the
Yeah.
sitting on the couch, like immediately where she is, not the entire couch. And I
Mhm.
closed my eyes as you were talking. And so I'm like, yeah, and the crossing of my arms, not my arm, like where my arms against my body,
Yeah.
but not my entire arms or not my entire body. That was so neat. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. She has some real gems, and she actually, she does other stuff where she just reads. People read affirmations to themselves, like, and then they record them and listen to them.
Yeah.
She'll do that, but she'll do it with the material. Like the reminder stuff I have on my board here. Every moment is a starting point for creation. It's
Yeah.
just that's important for me to remind myself of. So,
Well,
are we
the
gonna?
whole the idea of recording affirmations in your own voice and then listening to them is extremely, extremely powerful. Which I keep intending to do for myself, but honestly, because Kenneth Swatch's affirmations are just so similar to the way that I would articulate
Mhm.
something, and he has this incredible music in the background, since I
Yeah.
started listening to him, which was thanks to Andrea. I just, I love those, and they just, ooh, they
Have we
open me
mentioned
up.
this on this podcast yet? No, right? You haven't mentioned.
No, I don't think so. And when Andrea comes back, then I'll say something. And hey, if there's anyone out there listening who knows Kenneth Swarsh in Norway, he seems to be incredibly challenging to get a hold of in person. If you know him, we would love to have him on our show. I follow him on his YouTube channel, and just really, really, really just find him so incredibly inspirational and activational, and have been listening to his stuff at least once, if not more times a day since November. And it's now mid-September. So, the better part of a
Yeah.
year. And yeah, love it. I'm very grateful for those affirmations.
Yeah. Um, okay. Just have to, while she's not here, look at the prize. It's getting.
Okay, you know that we're still recording, right?
Yes, yes.
This is a little look at behind the scenes, folks. Okay. Andrea, Reverend Andrea, which we haven't even really talked about, is back. Here she comes. There she is. And you're muted.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Better. So
yeah.
as you were gone, then I was saying to Glenn, and just thanking him again for bringing in that Linda Madden doll exercise, because I realized as he was talking, and I closed my eyes as he was talking, that that's very much what I feel and experience as I'm meditating, or as
Yes.
I'm listening to, say, Kenneth Swarsh, who you introduced me to last November, the guy from Norway with the dreads,
Yeah.
who his powerful affirmations and affirmations
Love
thought
it.
club. Andrea, I have listened to his stuff at least once, if not several times a day, pretty much every day since you sent me that one little video last year in November after that
I
phone
love
call that we
his
had.
work. Yeah.
Like his language that he uses, it's like they're coming out of my mouth. And so like the reason that sort of came up was because Glenn was talking about the idea of recording your own voice, saying affirmations over some music, and listening to it, and how
I've
powerful
done
that is,
that.
right?
Yeah.
And so I've thought about that many, many times, but in this last year, not as often, because I listened to Kenneth's things, and the way he speaks and what he says, the phrasing he uses, it's like, well, that's exactly how I would say it. Like, I swear he's like in my brain sometimes
I
using.
agree. Yeah.
So, and the music that he has
Oh
in the
my God.
background. And
Right.
so as Glenn was saying, like not the car, but the sound of the car, not the whole couch, just like the couch, the part of the couch she's sitting on, and I had my eyes closed as he was talking, and I'm like, okay, yeah, not my entire body, just my arms where they're touching my body. Like, that's what happens. Like, you just become aware of, how less and less physicality there is going on, and as you expand into that, infinite,
Quantum field. Yeah.
quantum field. And so I just thought, what an amazing exercise to guide people who don't necessarily, have that experience, to just step by step, this is how she did it. I thought that was amazing. Thank you, Honey Bunch, for sharing that. And thank you, Andrea, for introducing me to Kenneth. He is someone I have wanted to have on the podcast, since a couple of months after you introduced me to his stuff.
Yeah.
And so I am just trying to find out how to find him. I'm almost at the point of like, I'm going to write a letter and address it to Kenneth Swarsh, Norway, and just send it and see if he gets it, because you can't email him. You can't.
What?
He's not accessible. Like, he
really
does
underneath
respond.
his YouTube stuff.
No, and I'm like, maybe I should buy something from his Powerful Thoughts affirmation clothing line, but I'm like, but I don't really want it. But I just like, because I feel like he would be so amazing to have a conversation with. But like, he comes on YouTube, he does his stuff, he's on Insight Timer, but there isn't a way to like get in touch with him that I have found yet. So if anyone out there knows,
have you tried to do his name.com? He doesn't have.
Oh, he has, like, he's online and everything. There's just no contact me, no email me,
Okay.
no
Okay.
anything like that, which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
Well, speaking of his affirmations, I actually transcribed his entire um, 1 hour and 42 minute sleep meditation
yeah.
for abundance. Transcribed it and read it out of my own voice back and recorded it with me saying all of those affirmations, so that now I've created that for myself. Like, I listen to that on a regular
Wow.
basis. Yeah, and it's really cool to hear it in your own voice. It's like really badass. Love
Is
that.
it? I'm not familiar with it. So other than Lassia's buzzing every time she talks about it, is it I am statements or is
Yes.
it?
Oh well, no, but
Okay.
he says you are.
He goes
Okay.
back and forth,
Yeah,
which I
but
think is
so
kind of neat.
well, I transcribed it to just being I am.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, but it is true that when I was studying how to write affirmations, using to use the law of attraction, which by the way, I've had amazing demonstrations using written affirmations, like crazy cool shit,
Hmm.
like international modeling contracts, being able to go see my boyfriend, who was, well, not really my boyfriend, but he was the bass guitarist of Pink Floyd. Like, I manifested a freaking trip to Tokyo to see them at the Budokan, like, it was fucking badass. But it was all through written affirmations. And so, but bottom line is, I heard that, when you're writing your affirmations, I am now, blah, 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 but it's really powerful to do it. You are now, and she is now, because we're so used to being programmed by what people
Yeah.
say about us.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I'll do written affirmations, and then I'll end it, instead of doing like 10 affirmations as I am, I'll end it with you are and she is.
Now I
Hmm.
wonder if that's maybe why he does it, because it's I'm aware that he flips back and forth between the two, and for me it's kind of like guidance, when it's coming from him reminding me when I kind of, maybe forget myself
Yes.
or something. And then when he switches to, the I am, it's like, okay, and now I'm able to like really ground, sort of thing. But that's
Yeah.
a really interesting point that you made about we can be so programmed by others' thoughts and beliefs and expectations, that
Yeah.
to hear that kind of, positivity and affirmation from someone else, is
Hmm.
just another kind of programming. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's really interesting. Huh.
Wow.
Are you about to
Hmm.
say
Well,
something, any much? I can't tell
no, I
sometimes.
just it's funny.
Well,
Like this is one of these conversations where it could stop at any moment, and then we would just do a sidebar and like just talk about that thing for like 2 hours. Anywhere in this, like it's all over
right,
the place, but it's
exactly.
like so like sparkling with all these, suggestions and ideas and practices. So, wow.
There's a really cool book that I'm feeling like I want to share with you guys too. It's called Time, Space, and Knowledge. And I read it when I was 21 years old. I was married at the time, and I asked my husband for a divorce, because he was somebody I met when I was 16 and married at 18. Um, and It was interesting. His sister-in-law had introduced me to this book, and it's this amazing man who was raised in the Eastern philosophies, and he was taken from his family when he was like 9 years old and trained by the masters to be able to walk through walls and just all this crazy stuff, right? And so when you brought up that woman's book, I was like, oh, I got to talk about that for a second.
Hmm.
And so when I told my husband at the time that I really didn't want to be married anymore, I mean, I was having affairs. I was 18, right? I was like having affairs with bass guitarist from Pink Floyd, for instance. And so he said to me that I had daddy issues, and he really wanted me to go see a therapist rather than getting divorced. And oh, by the way, don't tell me about your relationships with other people at the time, right? And so I was like, okay, I'll go see a therapist. Well, the first week in therapy, I was like, okay, see this book, Time, Space, and Knowledge, right? I can't remember the guy's name. It's a really amazing book. And I said to the therapist, I said, the only thing I'm really interested in discussing is like how to actually be able to put these practices into my own experience in life. And I'd like you to read the book, And this therapist was like, that's not how we do therapy, Andrea. You don't bring the book and tell me the curriculum. I freaking unpack your history, and that's what we do here. And I was like, well, then I think I'm going to have to, like, I'm not coming back, essentially, is what I said. And so I picked up that book just about a year ago. I bought the book again. It's not the easiest book to find. And started to read it again, and oh my god, now being 56 at the time I was, when I picked it up again, it's like, holy shit, I can't believe I was reading that when I was 21 years old, because he takes you into like the cells of your body, and he has you like go up inside of your spinal column and do all this, and imagine that you are this little tiny infinitesimal like spot inside of a giant body that actually is yours, that is non-physical. But to see it, it's just crazy stuff, like all these exercises, right? And you have to do them over weeks. It's like this one same exercise, you do it every single day for weeks until you're able to actually go inside of your body and visit your organs and visit your cells, and like it's just crazy cool stuff. And this is what he learned as a little boy, right? And so then he brought it out into the world through his writing.
I I just looked up the book on Amazon. It's the guy's name is Tarthang Tulku.
Yep.
Does that ring a bell? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow, that sounds incredible. And I also was thinking as you're talking, because I was thinking 18, but I'm like that you were reading and like resonating and just like really, like just
Hungry.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
at such an early age.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of my brother's journey this lifetime was to minister to me through his death, or through his transition. Like, was like, okay, I'm going to help my sister wake the fuck up, to the non-physical truth, the spiritual truth of who she is, because I couldn't let go of him. Like we had such a strong soul connection, my little brother and I did, it really, really strong. And when he left this plane, it was like, oh no, I can't live without his energy, right? And like I said, his energy has come to me. It came to me. It's come to me since, then. But it was my journey was like, how do I stay connected with him in the non-physical? And that's what I think led me to that book. It led me to other books, like I said earlier.
Hmm. Yeah, that that makes me think of. I mean, I'm from a family of seven kids, so I'm right at the end. Andrea's at the other end, and I'm at the younger end. And we lost a brother about 10 years ago, and so he's older. Um, but yeah, you get that kind of connection thing where it's just yeah, they're not really gone, right? But the other thing you mentioned about when people come into the earth, when you incarnate and manifest into a body for a period of time, I think you're coming with goals, you're coming with lessons you want to learn, and sometimes it's through those connections with either a parent or a sibling, um, that or a child even that sometimes it can be very non-standard, and it's those can be very rich experiences, but you can't easily explain it to people what it is that's going on.
Right.
And I think obviously when a person say has a child with special needs, or is autistic or in some other way developmentally um, uh, differently abled, you know, they they're coming with a toolkit that is like so much deeper and richer in some ways than the standard of just like, oh, I'm a kid, you know, at some point you cut the apron strings and off they go after
Right.
you teach the lessons. You know, there's sometimes where it's just like teaching love or whatever through a
Yes.
blocking off of other normal areas of development
Yep.
where you focus, you know, deeper and deeper because the band is very narrow, but the depth of that band is like, wow, you know, you can't always explain it. And I really admire when people, um, like I admire those souls who come into the earth experience to just do
Hmm.
that, to like, I'm going to learn, but I'm going to teach too, you know.
Right. And
And yeah,
yeah.
they don't give a shit. They just like,
And I think that's what exactly what addiction is here to teach us as well. Like there is no greater experience in terms of, well, in my experience, like my daughter's addiction to heroin. Both of my girls, you know, I have three daughters, but one of them is a foster daughter, and my two older daughters, one being the foster daughter. You know, they were in trouble. They were, you know, my biological daughter was facing 6 years in prison when she was 19 years old for burglarizing Orlando Bloom's house, and being accused of burglarizing Lindsay Lohan's and Paris Hilton's and a bunch of other, you know, celebrities here in Hollywood. Um, you know, but it wasn't like feeling that the pain and the hopelessness and the disconnection from them and from myself, like everything that I wanted for them to do to heal themselves, like to love themselves enough to stop injecting heroin into their veins, that was all a mirror for me to learn how to love myself enough to uh, healing my own mental
mm,
health issues and challenges. They were my greatest teachers. Learning how to speak compassionately to them, to feel compassion for them, helped me learn how to speak compassionately with myself and to feel compassion for my own journey. Um, and maybe this isn't true for everybody, but um, I know for sure that my teaching, preaching, bitching, moaning, shaming, blaming, judging, ostracizing, polarizing ways that I tried to control and manipulate other people's lives so that I felt safe in the world. My husbands, who are also addicted to different things, my brother, uh, you know, and my girls, like,
yeah,
and that's the kind of parenting that I received as well, like all that shaming stuff, like you're flawed. No, they're not flawed. They might be sticking heroin in their veins, but they're not flawed. They're fucking perfect just the way they are. And as soon as I start to see them that way,
yeah,
that's when healing takes place. That's when I start to see myself as perfect and see them as perfect and know that on some level right now there is perfect love between us and in us, right? And that's when we stop needing to numb. We
Mhm.
don't need to numb anymore when we feel that love for ourselves and each other.
wow, yeah,
Now, I have a question, and I'm sort of keeping an eye on the time because I know that you need to go soon. But the stuff that you're talking about, and I mean, you've talked about your daughters, you've talked about yourself, you've talked about the addiction over the past hour and a half almost. And there's a period of time, and because I haven't watched the show and don't know, a lot of details about it except to sort of look it up online and see,
Mm,
there was a lot of stuff that you did in the public eye because you guys were on television. You had a reality show that I believe revolved around this, or and so where in your sort of the period of growth, or where on the journey were you guys showing up
mm,
as a family, airing all of your, dirty laundry, your relationships, like everything that you just kind of talked about? And
right.
what was that like to be so visible and vulnerable I don't know who saw this, if it was just America or if it,
No, it was all over the world.
okay, so all over the
Yeah.
world, people are watching. And
it was on E! Entertainment. It was called Pretty Wild.
mhm.
But this is a perfect example of how powerful written affirmations are. My foster daughter and my daughter came to me and said, "Mom, we want to do it. We want to do a television and movies and stuff like that. Can you write us an affirmation?" And at the time, I was in classes. I was studying Meisner. I was studying scene study and improv myself, because I was in my 40s and I was like, I'd like to get back in front of the camera. I started my career as a model when I was 14 and lived and worked all over the world and did TV commercials back then. And I was like, and they knew that writing affirmations had been a powerful way that I was able to manifest that. So I wrote an affirmation for us as a family, and we read it every morning together as a family. And within 3 weeks, they had booked a major motion film, my two older girls. And when they were on that film, one of the producers said, "Hey, you girls are pretty wild. We'd like to talk with you. Tell us more about you." And they were like, "Well, my mom homeschools us, and by the way, she's really into the law of attraction, and that's the only reason we're here on this set today, is because she wrote us an affirmation, and that's how we manifested this movie." And they were like, "Okay, well, we want to meet your mom." And so he reached out to me and he was like, "We'd like to talk to you about doing a sizzle reel and possibly doing a reality show." And I was like, "Nah, I want to do serious acting. I'm not interested in doing a reality show." But he said, "Well, yeah, but you're into the law of attraction and you're a minister. Wouldn't you like to teach that, on national television?" And that's, what intrigued me enough to say, "Okay, I'll shoot the sizzle reel." Well, next thing you know, A&E and E! Entertainment are in a bidding war because the sizzle reel got such great reviews. But it wasn't called Pretty Wild at the time. It was called Homeschooled with the Arlingtons. And it was all about like this mom that was kind of wacky, into metaphysics, teaching her girls how to use affirmations and the law of attraction to navigate the entertainment industry and to work in film, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but on the first day of filming, we went with E! Entertainment. The freaking cops showed up at our house at like 7:30 in the morning, and I thought it was something that the producers had initiated. Like I thought it was bullshit. Like I thought it was just. And so at first I was like, "Yeah, come on in." Next thing I know,
Whoa.
My daughter hadn't been read her Miranda rights, even though the freaking lead investigative officer said that she had. She's spilling her guts about some burglary, and I'm in the living room listening to this going, "What?" And we had already signed our contract. We had been given our signing bonus, and we had been struggling financially as a family for a long time. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" We couldn't like walk away from our commitment and pay our bills at the time, and so we ended up staying. But so I had evidence that Alexis and Tess had actually called the Hollywood Police Department, and they had a 7-minute phone call. It was in both of their phone records. Tessie had Sprint phone cellular service, and Alexis had AT&T, and both of them showed this 3-way call to the fucking Hollywood Police Department on the night that Lindsay Lohan's burglary was announced on the news, asking for people to call in if they had any awareness of this. And the girls were like, "Yeah, we know who did it," right? And so next thing you know, we're doing this reality show, and I thought, okay, well, we've got evidence, right? And so we hired this is a long story. Anyway, bottom line is I could freaking go on forever. Like Glenn was saying, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But so we ended up manifesting this show, and it turned into a total shit show, and it was a fucking nightmare. And
Wow.
But I wouldn't change a thing, because it's what caused us all to wake up to a greater truth. And it was very painful, and we went through years of struggle. I didn't, at the time, the girls were not, when we first I think it was the night before she was arrested was the first time she shot heroin in her veins, both of the girls. They had been using drugs, but so had I when I was their age, and I was like, they'll get over it, they'll get through it. It was a denial, and for some reason I was in denial, probably because it was too uncomfortable not to be, right? But that journey for Tess, my foster daughter, lasted another 4 years, IV heroin. Alexis was facing 6 years in prison and her second felony at age 19. And the judge had 25 years in recovery and said, you can go to inpatient treatment for 12 months and 3 years of probation, or you can go to prison for 6 years. What's your choice? And she stayed sober. And now she and her husband own Oro House. It was just, in Newsweek as being the #1 treatment center in the country for dual diagnosis. I mean, like her whole life is pretty admirable, what she's done and who they help. And yeah, they have a really incredible program that's non-traditional, not 12-step based. It's pretty cool. So, but our whole journey, I think addiction can be a huge spiritual wake up call for us. And it can also be a tragedy that can either continue to spiral downward, or it can be the wake up call that helps everybody move into their conscious life and living life consciously.
Wow. Yeah, no, everything that we have talked about, just like Glenn said, just like you said, I mean, could just go off in hours. Now, like, we could do an entire series of like 10 podcasts just talking.
Right.
So, there is so much more that I want to ask. One last thing, because the way that I was introduced to you was through the Global Truth Center Los Angeles, when I saw you on stage back years ago. Well, not that I still haven't been there in person, even though I've been studying, there for the last 3 years. I've never actually been down there, but you were just like another person to step on stage and be the practitioner or the lead practitioner of the day. And you always caught my eye because you were so stylishly dressed. And then your energy, just like the words that you used and your energy, that like you were one of the practitioners that I really resonated with. And I didn't realize that you were already a minister until you went into Dr. James's ministerial class when I was in Dr. James's spiritual practitioner studies class. And so, we went through those 2 years, parallel. And we heard about your class, and I don't know, maybe you heard about our class, and some of you guys sat in on our class. And those were the 2 years during which Dr. James's daughter Nora died. And there was just, I remember there was other stuff that happened as well, but it just felt like an incredible, pivotal, profound 2 years for me that just really, really opened me up to who and what I am, that exploration and discovery of self that I didn't even know was possible.
Right.
So knowing that you were already a minister, that you had already been doing all of this work on yourself with your family for decades, you decided to go back and do ministerial again. What was the inspiration for that?
Oh, well, after completing ministerial in 2000, which was like a couple of months after my mom passed away, suddenly, my former spouse, my daughter's dad, became homeless. He was, having problems with substance use disorder, and my life was spiraling out of control on so many levels. And I met a man who I ended up marrying, and he was not so much into the center, the spiritual center. And I was really craving love and belonging because I had lost people in my life in such a profoundly painful way. Both my grandmothers also in that period of time. And so I got sidetracked again, started smoking weed, drinking wine, not practicing my truth, right? Not practicing the truth that resonated with me, that called me to go through 6 years of ministerial, right? And so and during those years with the girls, and dealing with their father's homelessness and so forth, I had lost my way. And it was intellectually here, but it wasn't living in me, as me, through me, the way that it had at certain points in my life. It's like a muscle, that you have to exercise, and I hadn't been exercising it. And so when shit hit the fan back in 2013, my girls weren't talking to me. My third marriage was ending. I mean, my life felt like there was no point or purpose, right? That's when it was like, oh, deep dive back into the spirituality. Thank God I reached out to a couple people who, one of them being a life coach, who was like, okay, here's where we're going. This is what we're doing. This is who you are. Let me help you, remind you of who you are. And then it was in, I think 2015 is when I met Dr. James again. Met him, went back to the center, saw him there, and I was like, oh, he's my mentor now,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
I needed a mentor, and he was it. And oh man, Dr. James and I had some profound conversations that led me to want to go back into the ministerial. And so he let me start again at I think year 3 of practitioner, going through the first 2 years. And so I was able to start into the, I think, 4th year of practitioner, and go through ministerial again with him. And it was that during that period of time where I was really able to take it into a deep level. So that's what made me. He was like, Andrea, if you really knew who you were, your life would be amazing. And I was like, okay, I'm ready for that. God, did I ever need that?
Yeah.
We all do.
And
we need mentors. How do you do this shit alone? You can't do this shit alone. I mean, you can, but no, you really can't.
Yeah. No, everything that we have talked about, everything that we could expand on for hours and hours and days and whatever, all of it has just been so amazing and rich. And I'm just so grateful for this conversation.
Yeah.
So seeing what time it is right now, Honey Bunch, I would love for you to unmute yourself, because we're going to move into our next segment of the show, which is the super rapid fire question round, where Glenn is going to bombard you with questions for 1 minute, and then you just answer off the top of your head. Great. No deep thought or anything. And it's just a fun way to lighten things up and get to know you a little bit better. And then after that, he'll tell you what you've won.
Oh,
what you won.
Air quotation marks around the word "won."
Beautiful.
Okay,
Honey Bunch. Wait.
Oh.
On your mark, get set, go.
Okay, do you sing in the shower?
Yes.
How many tattoos do you have?
0.
Okay, which do you prefer, tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Okay, asking for help or going it alone?
Going it alone.
High heels or sandals?
High heels.
Swearing or hitting a pillow?
Swearing.
Kind of knew that one. Reading to kids or watching movies with kids?
Reading.
Netflix or nature?
No, nature. But I'm dating a man who has really.
Okay, no explanation.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, Floyd or Zeppelin?
Floyd.
Okay, reading or writing?
Writing.
Books or movies?
Books.
Kindness or compassion?
Compassion.
Quantum consciousness or God?
Quantum.
Sweet or savory?
Savory.
Okay, and your favorite city to visit?
Tokyo.
Ding, 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 ding. Okay, Glenn, why don't you tell Reverend Andrea what she's won?
Okay. I'm cheating here. I'm actually quoting from a book the quote isn't from the guy. This is from the book Jonathan Haidt, The Happiness Hypothesis. But he uses quotes to start each chapter, as many people do, even my wife. Okay, on there's 4 little quotes. On the first part is changing your mind. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic, says, the whole universe is change, and life itself is but what you deem it. Followed up by Buddha, who said, what we are today comes from our thoughts of yesterday, and our present thoughts build our life of tomorrow. Our life is the creation of our mind. Flip to the end of the book, and there's two more short quotes. Heraclitus said, "All things come into being by conflict of opposites." And then William Blake, the poet and philosopher, finishes off with, "Without contraries is no progression. Attraction and repulsion, reason and energy, love and hate are necessary to human existence. Sorry, I messed that one up. So thank you.
Love that. Yeah.
Those are great. All of them. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you, Jonathan Haidt, for including them in your book, The Happiness Hypothesis. Okay, Andrea, if someone wanted to find out more about you, what you do, what you offer, where would they go?
I would say Instagram is the best place. I need to update my my website, but that's andreaarlington.com, and so is my Instagram and Facebook. So yeah. Yeah.
Is your Instagram, is it just Andrea Arlington, the handle?
Yeah, I think so. It's or Andrea Arlington Life Coach.
Okay.
I think yeah.
I'll look it up, and then we'll have a slide so that people can see.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. And remind people again of the thing that you do every first and third
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you go to my website, andreaarlington.com, under courses, you'll see my Life Reset course, but you'll also see my invite for the Tuesday night free and open to the public Zoom call. And it's for anybody. It started out being specifically for people who love somebody who struggles with addiction, but it's really learning about how to connect with your own soul and each other's in a way that gives you influence with a loved one, because you can't, like, connection, heart to heart human connection is the greatest tool you have to have influence with anybody. And so I teach parents and family members how to quickly reconnect with their loved one when there's polarization and ostracization happening in the family through the use of language. Like, my thing is all about using language. It's like our words are wands. We can really help people feel heard and loved and supported and cherished and respected, and all of those things, even if they're using, it's not, we don't want to focus on that. We want to focus on the truth of who they are. And it helps to know who you are too, which I'm really good at reminding people of.
Yes, you are. I can attest to that personally. Oh, Andrea, thank you so much. It has been such an amazing, amazing conversation that really could just go on and on and on. So thank you for talking about just, who you believe yourself to be, talking so openly about addiction, about your life experience, your journey of spirituality and expansion, talking about your family the way that you did, about all sort of the lessons and insights learned and gained from your relationships, from your relationship with your brother, and just, everything, the gazing into the pupils, and then, all of the stuff that you have on your website that can support people in connecting better with themselves and each other to just step into a greater, more loving, more compassionate expression of who and what they are. So thank you so much. We're so grateful for your time and presence.
You're so welcome. And I just was, as you were talking, I was like, oh my God, I have so much content on YouTube too. Like, if people want to watch YouTube videos of me teaching people and talking about how to use these tools, you can find a lot on YouTube.
All right. There will be another slide on that too.
Thanks, Leslie. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you so much for everybody who's here today listening as well. Good for you for being on the journey. Yeah. Good for you for loving yourself enough to do this work.
Love it. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Honey Bunch, for co-steering the ship as always. Thank you, Andrea Arlington, for being such a super spectacular, sparkly, amazing, inspirational guest. And thank you to everyone who tuned in, who watched, however it is that you engage with us. This has been another episode of Who Do You Think You Are? We are so grateful for your time and presence and look forward to seeing you for the next episode of Who Do You Think You Are? Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
This has been an episode of Who Do You Think You Are? An exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lasya Kohut, and I have been your host. My co-host has been Glenn Sheridan. We'd like to thank the following for helping make this podcast a reality. Today's special guest, Reverend Andrea Arlington. Music, Vasco Lourenco, copyright 123rf.com. Background illustration, Sakma Sterke, copyright 123rf.com. For more information on this podcast and our Lassia Cahoot Soul Excavator, please visit www.lassiacahoot.com. If you like what you've heard, please like, subscribe, and let us know by leaving a comment. Thanks for tuning into Who Do You Think You Are?